Zooey Mama. I'm here today to talk about the new exciting card coming to Marvel Snap, Anti-Venom. This is also the last card of this Venom season. I feel like it just flew by. Probably a good chunk of that is because of high voltage. Great game mode, super fun. That week just disappeared real quick, and I'm hoping that that mode comes back soon. But here we have Anti-Venom, and I'm going to go over some of his best synergies, deck ideas, the good, the bad, and give my thoughts if I think he's going to be worth buying or if he might be a bit of a bust and you should save all your spotlight keys and tokens for next season. So Anti-Venom is a 4-cost 6-powered card with the ability on reveal set the cost and power of your deck's top card to 0. Okay, so he's hitting both card and power. It's not swapping it like Mr. Negative. He's just picking one card and he's setting both to 0. And a second dinner has confirmed this does work with Luke Cage to reset the power. Okay, some people were thinking maybe it wouldn't because of Shadow King's interaction, but Shadow King is really special in that he can override Luke Cage's protection. Okay, but most cards that are just changing the cost or setting it, it does not override Luke Cage. So in this case, if you played Anti-Venom, let's say Magneto was on top of your deck, who's a 6/12. Next turn, you draw that Magneto as a 0/0. You play him on the board. If you had Luke Cage down, that Magneto will have his full 12 power. So you just got a free Magneto. So he's got some obviously great synergy with Luke Cage. And I just want to touch on one more thing. New data mines, as of today, when the newest OTA just dropped, are showing Anti-Venom to have 7 power. Okay, this is weird. Second Dinner has not said anything about his power going up. They have done this before where they do increase the power of some cards right before release. They did it with Makari. She didn't have too much hype around her. Anti-Venom doesn't have too much hype. It's possible that Second Dinner did just change his power, but they haven't said anything, so it could just be a bit of a mistake in the data that's showing up on data mines, showing up on websites like Snap.fan and Marvel Snap Zone. So I'm going to presume Anti-Venom is still a 4/6, but it is possible he is coming out with 7 power, and Second Dinner is just yet to announce it. So to start off with his key synergies, of course, we are looking at cards like Shadow King and Luke Cage. Okay, I did already mention the great Luke Cage synergy that you can protect a card's power, but you also have Shadow King here that can reset a card to its base or starting power. So in this case, it would be a bit harder because of time constraints. If you're playing Anti-Venom on turn 4, you basically need to play the card you draw right on turn 5 or 6 and then play Shadow King on its location to hit it. It should reset that power back to normal as well. Okay, but Second Dinner has already confirmed the interaction with Luke Cage. And I think something like Iron Man is a great target. Really, I think cards that like Mr. Negative are great targets for Anti-Venom because you may not always have that Luke Cage. Even if he's in your deck, maybe you don't draw him. You do want cards that don't necessarily need a high starting power. Okay, if you do draw them at 0/0 and you don't have the Luke Cage, you want it to still be a really good card. So I think Iron Man is great. Even a card like Blob is great. Null, Arnim Zola, these cards that are all ability and have very low or even 0 starting power, I think might love Anti-Venom. Now, what does he get countered by? Well, if your opponent's putting rocks in your deck or they're messing, with your deck, maybe they're stunting some of your draws, that's going to be really annoying, okay? And we did just see Rock Slide get nerfed. Rock Slide is now a 4-cost card. Once again, it's possible that he's nerfed because of Anti-Venom coming out. Okay, it's possible that Rock Slide on turn 3 was messing with Anti-Venom on turn 4 too much. And it was too big of a counter, so Second Dinner said, hey, let's nerf Rock Slide right before Anti-Venom comes out. So maybe you play your Anti-Venom, and if your card revealed first, your opponent puts rocks in your deck afterwards with Rock Slide. Okay, but Korg is coming down on turn 1 usually, so that is still hitting you. If you do hit a rock, you're going to be pretty sad about it. If you do hit a card and it is a 0/0 stats, you don't have the Luke Cage, but you're playing, like a 0/0 Iron Man or something on turn 6 for a big combo, and you might like Anti-Venom in combo decks like Mr. Negative style decks, Alioth can absolutely wreck those type of decks if you're just relying on one big fancy move on turn 6. Sometimes it's obvious where you're going to play, and Alioth will ruin your day. And Mobius, it does counter the cost discount. So if you do hit a card with Anti-Venom and you draw that card, but your opponent has played Mobius, Well, you now just have a full cost card with 0 power. Okay, you would have like a 6-0 Magneto in your hand, and that feels pretty bad. So to dive more into the pros and cons for Anti-Venom, we will start off with the good. The good is that he does have a very high ceiling if you hit something good. Okay, I did mention a card like Magneto or Iron Man, and if you're able to have Luke Cage down as well to, negate the power reduction, that's gonna be awesome. Very good ceiling for a 4 cost, and Anti-Venom himself has 6 power already, so you could just get crazy stats on the board. He could be in a game-winning combo because of his power and his ability. The card you hit is hidden from your opponent. This can be very good for stealing cubes. So while Iron Lad, it does seem a bit more efficient, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the good, your opponent sees what Iron Lad hits. If you play Iron Lad on turn 4 and he hits Iron Man, that feels great, that's awesome, but your opponent knows that. So if you snap right there, well, your opponent might just retreat. With Anti-Venom, if you hit an Iron Man or something awesome, they don't know, and even if you snap, they may not leave, and you may steal more cubes with Anti-Venom that way. He's less all-in than Mr. Negative, right? He's not flipping or changing the cost and power of all cards in your deck. It's just the top card. But Mr. Negative is also a 4 cost -1 powered card. Anti-Venom is a 4/6. Again, it's just a nice stat line. So he is less of an all-in combo, but he's better as a base. Okay, so when you don't get the big combo, everything doesn't go perfectly, you still have some nice power on the board. Okay, so it's kind of a trade-off there. And again, there are ways to mitigate the hit card's power reduction, Luke Cage being by far the easiest. Now, in terms of the bad, some of the cons to Anti-Venom is this 1 turn delay, I think, is really bad. I think people may not realize how harmful this can be trying to set up a combo. Okay, Iron Lad happens instantly. And so while your opponent does see it, you can play a turn 6 Iron Lad. And, maybe Iron Man is like 2 or 3 cards left in your deck, and one of them is Iron Man. You've got a good chance for hitting that. With Anti-Venom, you can't play him on turn 6. You need to draw the card. He's not drawing something for you. It's not like Jubilee where it pulls the card out of your deck. So while he does have 5 more power than Jubilee, I think Jubilee is better in some instances where you do need to fish for specific cards. It's more combo-oriented. Iron Lad is better for squeezing him in right on turn 6. Again, just kind of being more efficient there. And, the 1 turn setback does hurt. We see this with Activate cards, too. Activate cards haven't taken off a ton. They have in cases where you wanted to activate it really late, like Hell Cow. But in general, that 1 turn delay can be tough. I mean, it matters a lot. And, I mentioned he's not Mr. Negative level of payoff or, combo necessity, but we are still talking about an RNG card. He's going to have bad hits. It is going to feel a bit inconsistent, okay? And when Anti-Venom hits something bad, basically just a 4/6, kind of like Iron Lad hitting something bad. And then, he does maybe rely on Luke Cage or Shadow King. And so if you have mostly cards that you want their full power, you have that Magneto or, I don't know, an Infinite or something, and you need Luke Cage or Shadow King, you're not going to draw those every game, right? Even if they're in your deck, you can draw them about 75% of the time. So that is some more inconsistency with Anti-Venom decks. Here's just my friendly reminder to give this video a like if you are enjoying it, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because we cover every single new card release in Marvel Snap. So now to look at Anti-Venom's floor and ceiling. In his floor, him at his worst, he's just that he does nothing. Okay, he's a 4/6. You either played him on turn 6, so you didn't have time to draw the card, or your draws got messed up, so you didn't draw it, or your opponent countered you, put some rocks in your deck, whatever it may be. That's not horrible. That is viable. It's not really competitive, but you're still getting a 4/6. There's going to be times where you just play him on turn 6 because you got nothing better to do. So not the worst floor here. Fairly typical for 4-cost cards. The ceiling is that you're hitting a really good card, a card with a strong effect, and even strong power, and you have Luke Cage to revert the power reduction. Okay, in which case, you're basically getting Anti-Venom as a 4/6, and you're getting a free 6 cost. He's making the top card of your deck, 5 or 6 cost card, just costs 0, but it has the full power. I don't think this is overpowered because it does still require Luke Cage, right? This best case scenario does require another card. This is not just solo Anti-Venom making this crazy stuff happen. Okay, he does require this synergy to hit the ceiling. And so on average, I think you're going to hit a decent target. You're going to build decks with him, kind of like a Mr. Negative deck, where you have a lot of good targets. So you're going to hit the really good targets sometimes, a good chunk of the time. Sometimes you're going to hit kind of mediocre targets, but you're not going to have too many horrible targets in there. But you can't rely on the Luke Cage, right? Even if you have Luke Cage in your deck, you think it would be good to get him down and to restore the big card's power. You're going to have variance in the card that you hit. You're only going to draw that Luke Cage about 75% of the time. Sometimes you may hit Luke Cage with Anti-Venom, okay? In which case you just didn't get huge value out of it. And so I really think you should prepare for having Anti-Venom as a 4/6 and just having a 0/0 big card, okay? A 0/0 card that has a strong effect, whether it's the Iron Man, whether it's your Shang-Chi, right? Just something nice that's usually on a 3, 4, 5 cost card that you are going to like to have, but you do have that 1 turn delay in there still. So the first deck that I've put together for Anti-Venom is this Anti-Negative deck. And you will notice here, I do have him showing as a 4/7. Again, I mentioned Snap.fan right now, as of today, has updated Anti-Venom to show 7 power. Okay, I don't know if this is going to go live at 7 or if it's a bit of a bug, as I mentioned at the start of the video, but it's possible. So here, I think this deck likes Anti-Venom. Again, it's a Mr. Negative deck, so it's already used to having some cards get their power and cost flipped. We've got multiple great targets in here. If you hit Jubilee or Iron Man or anything bigger, you're pretty happy. The Living Tribunal isn't the best, but it's not the worst. Sometimes it's nice, if you didn't draw your magic and it is a 6-turn game, but you did get lucky with Anti-Venom, you could still pull off a nice Iron Man Onslaught plus Living Tribunal combo if you did hit the Onslaught or Living Tribunal with Anti-Venom. Other than that, you look into player things, hopefully go to turn 7 with magic. Maybe you could do Sarah plus Onslaught to get really big discounts. You got Mystique in there if you need to do an Iron Man Mystique. And, just play out. I love this style deck. It kind of gets hard countered by a few things. It has very polarizing matchups, but I love me some classic ongoings, and I think Anti-Venom could work in a deck like this. Next up, I've got this Pixie Shenanigans deck. Okay, so this deck is pretty wild. We do have Luke Cage in here to help out in restoring the power of whatever card Anti-Venom is hitting, but we also have Pixie and Mobius. Okay, so we've got some shuffling around with cost and power with Pixie and Anti-Venom. We've got Wiccan to help get more energy that way. I mean, this deck is looking to just be completely surprising to your opponent. They're not going to know how many cards you're going to play on the final turn, how cheap your 5 and 6 cost cards are going to be. Getting a really cheap Alioth or Cersei could be really, really powerful, especially if you do have Luke Cage down to restore the power. This deck is even more RNG heavy, I think, than the last one. It's pretty wild, but this can definitely take some big cube wins by just surprising your opponent around the final turn. And last up, I've put Anti-Venom in this hella discard list, okay? And so I actually took out Ghost Rider here. Some decks use Blink instead, and put in Anti-Venom. Now this deck did just take a hit with the Hellcow nerf. He's only discarding 1 card now, or should I say she, Hellcow, is only discarding 1 card now when activated. But with Anti-Venom, it is pretty interesting because you could now, in theory, if you do hit a decent target, on the final turn, you could play Hela plus another 6 cost. So if you went to play Hela, and maybe you had 2 6 costs in hand, one of them was hit by Anti-Venom, so it's a 0/0, and you've got Hellcow on board, well, you play Hela, you play that 0/0, and then you discard the third one with Hellcow. Okay, so it maybe is kind of making up for a Hellcow losing that 1 discard. You just have to play Anti-Venom in advance. You're hoping to have Luke Cage for Anti-Venom's target and whatever Hela brings back as well. I don't play too much Hela discard. It's really just not my archetype, even when it's meta. But I could see AV maybe gain some use here. Again, maybe just Ghost Rider or Blink is better in this version, but hopefully trying to make up for some of that Hellcow nerf. Now to talk about this Spotlight Week, we have Anti-Venom alongside Supergiant and Ghost Spider. pretty interesting week here. In terms of being competitive, it's okay. It's almost bad. Ghost Spider is actually a really good card. Okay, Ghost Spider is a really good card, but Ghost Spider's Series 4. A lot of people own Ghost Spider. So if you already own her, I don't think you have much to chase after. You're not chasing after Supergiant. Supergiant is one of the biggest flops of the year. Okay, this card just does not see play. Even with old Zabu when he was really strong, does not see play. Now with new Zabu, not seeing play. I don't know what it's going to take for Supergiant to see play. I really thought they were going to buff her before the Spotlight Week started. Okay, that was my theory. I was wrong. They have not buffed her. She's not worth it. So if you do need Ghost Spider, there's some competitive value there. If you already have Ghost Spider, don't chase after it for Supergiant is my recommendation here. Okay, the variants, I also think they're okay. Maybe they're even good. The Anti-Venom variant is pretty good. Supergiant one is nice. The Ghost Spider one is nice. Ghost Spider does have a lot of really good variants already in the game, though. So kind of tough competition there. But again, if you don't care about Anti-Venom, I would just get Ghost Spider with tokens if you don't own her. Or if you do care about Anti-Venom and you don't own Ghost Spider, I would go ahead and maybe open, right, to get Ghost Spider and Anti-Venom. But don't open for Supergiant is my recommendation 100% here. So now let's look at my final ratings and predictions and yours for Anti-Venom, okay? We got my ratings on the left here, the community ratings on the right. In terms of being flexible, we agree. I think he's a little flexible. He's okay. He's not the worst. I think you can try him out in different things. A bit similar to a Jubilee or an Iron Lad in some of the homes you're looking to put him. I don't think he'll be as versatile as those cards, but I think you can try a few things. It's not like Anti-Venom is just stuck to discard. You know, he doesn't mention discard in his text. He doesn't mention destroy in his text. He's not just stuck to one thing. You can try him in different things. Whether he'll be good in different things is a different question. Okay, but you can definitely try him out in a few different things because he's mainly just focusing on decks that you have some really expensive cards in, and there are multiple archetypes that utilize those kind of cards. And the community agrees here. Okay, the community is all saying Anti-Venom has okay flexibility, not horrible. Especially when you look at some cards came out previously this season. I mean, we had Scorn coming out, which is just set to discard. So we got maybe some potential here. In terms of being competitive, the community is a bit higher on Anti-Venom than I am. I think Anti-Venom sucks. Okay, I do. I mentioned earlier that maybe Anti-Venom is now 7 power being launched. That would not surprise me. Even though Second Dinner hasn't said anything about it yet, I would not be surprised because I think it's going to be a bad card. And they did just rework Zabu a bit. And I showed Zabu in the anti-negative deck earlier in this video. But I don't think Zabu is anywhere near his former glory, his former strength. And so I think 4-cost cards are still in a tough spot. I think Anti-Venom is just too slow. It's kind of like Activate, right? You have to wait a turn. Those Activate 4-costs, they're just too slow unless their name is Hellcow. So I think the delay, even though it's not an Activate card, it is on reveal. That's messing with the top card of your deck. But it's not happening instantly like Jubilee or Iron Lad. I think you're just better playing Iron Lad. I really do. I think you're better off just playing Iron Lad. Again, the surprise potential could be nice for Anti-Venom. And you know what you hit before it's actually on the board. But I just don't think it's going to be better than that. And Iron Lad isn't amazing right now. When he came out, he was really strong, but he's kind of fallen off a bit. Power creep in the Zabu nerf, right? So I don't think Anti-Venom's going to do much. The community has a bit more faith than I do. The community is a bit more excited for Anti-Venom. Still thinks he's just going to be okay. Right? People don't really think he's going to be amazing. We'll have to see, though. But my recommendation is to not chase after Anti-Venom. Again, we'll have to see how he performs once he comes out. The Spotlight, too, is just not great. If you do really want Anti-Venom and you already own Ghost Spider, you're probably going to look for tokens here to pick him up with. If you don't have any of the cards, Supergiant, Ghost Spider, and Anti-Venom, then, lucky you. Maybe it is a good week for you to open. But my recommendation is be really careful and, maybe start saving your keys for the upcoming November season. And as always, some final reminders here is that the safe strategy is to wait a few days after a new card is released before 100% deciding, committing to opening or skipping, okay? You can watch how people are performing with the card, watch people on YouTube, watch people on Twitch, see how things are going. Because the community, myself included, is wrong about cards all the time. Maybe Anti-Venom comes out and he's amazing and there's some really OP or broken combo. Do I expect that to happen? No. Is it possible? Sure it is. Okay, that can always happen. So just because I'm low on it and the community isn't too hyped on it either, doesn't mean it's guaranteed to be bad. So definitely keep an eye out, keep options open, an open mind, and see what happens, see how he performs. Sometimes cards don't work as believed. Sometimes they don't even have the same stats. Again, I'm not even sure if Anti-Venom is a 4-6 or a 4-7. Okay, Second Dinner, everything they put out is 4-6, but Datamine showing 7 right now has me a bit confused, and I wouldn't be too surprised either way, because sometimes they just kind of change things last minute on us. Resources are scarce, so prioritize cards that fit your playstyle. Maybe you do love combo decks, you love pixie stuff, you love Mr. Negative stuff, all kinds of energy shenanigans. You might really like Anti-Venom, even if he doesn't perform super well. And lastly, he may just get buffed. If he's as bad as I think he is, he might just get buffed, or they buff Zabu even more to help make 4 costs even better. Okay, and then maybe he's playable at that point, right? The game's always changing, so definitely go after cards that you just think are fun and that you're going to play the most. So let me know what you think of Anti-Venom, what combos and decks you are excited to try him out in. If you have any other ideas from the decks that I showed in this video, let me know in the comments down below. Until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.